What's up, guys? Welcome to a blast from the past. This is actually my old 987.1 Porsche Cayman S. After 2 long years, I am behind the wheel once again. But no, I did not repurchase my old car. The person I sold this car to back in 2020 actually posted it for sale on Bring a Trailer just a couple weeks ago and sold it to one of my subscribers, Austin, who also lives in the Bay Area. So when he reached out to me on Instagram, I asked if he'd be generous enough to let me get behind the wheel of my old car. And so here we are. We will be comparing this still bone stock 2006 Cayman S against Litco's 2008 Cayman S Sport, with a host of mods, including a built 4-liter engine from a 997 Carrera. But first things first, let's revisit my old Cayman S. The only change that's been done to the car is Austin has rewrapped the outer rim of the steering wheel, which makes it feel so much nicer. That was one of my main complaints of the Cayman S with just the base steering wheel. It has a very, very thin outer rim. Now, other specs about the car: it weighs just a tad under 3,000 pounds. It's got a 3.4 liter flat 6 naturally aspirated engine, M97 engine code, making 295 horsepower and around 250 foot-pounds of torque. Open rear differential, and we're on the same set of tires that I had back in 2019, which came on the car when I bought it, a set of not so grippy Yokohama Advanced Sport all-season tires. Now let's drive the car, and I'll attempt to remind myself why I bought it and perhaps also why I sold it. Feels so weird and nostalgic being behind the wheel of my old car. It's a damp day out here, so not a whole lot of grip on this surface. Wow, these brakes. The pedal feel is so firm, it's so solid and reassuring. One of my favorite parts of the Cayman S. It was the first thing I noticed actually when I bought the car back in 2019. Yeah, that power feels nice. That power feels nice. Definitely a lot more power than my Subaru BRZ. We've got the car in sport mode, which heightens the throttle sensitivity. This is drive-by-wire. The engine is just so linear, it pulls so strong from the mid-range all the way to its around 7,200 RPM red line. Forgot how quick this car feels. It really makes my BRZ feel a little bit lethargic in a straight line, if I'm being honest. This good old-fashioned hydraulic power steering feels so good out here. There's a little bit of play just on center, but the way it loads up, the weighting, and just the overall feedback, the information you get about the road through your fingertips is just incredible. In sport mode, this car is quite easy to heel toe. That heightened throttle response, beautiful mid-engine balance. It's that combination of turn-in and traction coming out of a corner. All right, let's ring this thing out. Always gotta love a Porsche naturally aspirated flat 6. But how will that 4-liter built engine in Litco's Cayman S feel? That's what I'm curious to find out. Got a little bit of one tire fire there. I always felt that this car could use an open diff. It doesn't need one per se. Even for canyon driving, being mid-engine does give it plenty of rear traction. On the racetrack, the one time I took it to Laguna Seca, the lack of a rear limited slip diff definitely did show its ugly head more than once. Like right there, just a little bit traction limited. This car feels so good to drive. There we go. Playful little car, this Cayman S. Now, I blew the stock air oil separator within, I think, 5 or 6 laps at Laguna Seca. So that was a common failure point with this car, and that was one of the main reasons I sold it. I didn't want to pony up $1,900 for the Motorsport air oil separator that presumably would have solved that problem, especially with the admittedly overblown on the internet issue of bore scoring and IMS failure with these engines. It just wasn't really worth the risk for me to continue building and tracking the car. That being said, outside of that minor AOS failure, I had 0 mechanical issues with this Cayman S. It really did serve me well as a daily driver for over a year. And I remember now why I bought this car. It's just the balance of driving feel, performance, overall build quality and comfort. I would say in terms of ride comfort, this car is very close to my BRZ. I love hearing that buzzy mechanical whir of that engine right behind me, and it makes this car just so special to drive, despite it being just a kind of run-of-the-mill Cayman S. Nowadays, you can pick these cars up for right around $25,000, plus or minus $5,000 depending on mileage and condition. This one's just got a little over 82,000 miles, mechanically solid, a little bit of a groan from the power steering rack, but that's pretty much it. It's geared quite long, but thankfully it has a reasonable amount of mid-range torque, so you don't necessarily need shorter gearing, although it would definitely make it a little bit more fun to drive. One of my main gripes with the overall driving feel of this car was always and still is this 6-speed manual transmission. It just has a kind of floppy feel to it, not a whole lot of weight, not a very positive engagement. But it's a minor detractor from an otherwise amazing car to drive. Definitely a blast from the past. Going back and revisiting my very first Porsche, and a car that I was very excited and overall happy with. Glad to see that Austin, within 1 week of ownership, has already added some of his own personal touches to it with his steering wheel. Still got the same magnetic phone mount that I had back in the day. But now it's time to try out the modified 4-liter engine equipped version of this Cayman S. I can't imagine what this car will feel like with an extra 100 or so horsepower. It's a little bittersweet, the fact that I have to turn this car off now after just another 25-minute drive. Now it's time to find out if 400 horsepower is too much for this chassis. All right, so this is a modified 2008 Porsche Cayman S Sport Edition. It's also a 987.1 generation, and the party piece is a 4-liter engine built by MB Motorsport, which includes a Carrera 3.6-liter engine core with a Carrera S crankshaft, JE pistons, Carrillo rods, ARP rod bolts, IPD plenum, and 82mm GT3 throttle body, and this thing has a Softronic tune. Otherwise, this car is actually pretty close to stock. It's got stock Porsche performance exhaust, stock brakes with just a GT3 Masters cylinder, OEM PASM suspension, adjustable dampers, but he did add the DSC Sport controller to it. Apex SM10 18-inch wheels with 245 front, 275 rear, Falcon RT 660s. So over 400 horsepower at the crank, and the car weighs right around 3,000 pounds. So in terms of weight, it's right there in line with the stock Cayman S. The main difference, of course, is an extra 100 plus horsepower. So let's see how this thing compares to my stock, or I should say my old stock Cayman S. Much fruitier startup with the Porsche sports exhaust and eBay headers. All right, so we're gonna leave the PASM in the normal mode because the stiff mode is just way too much for this road, but we will turn PSM off as we did in my old car. I have to keep correcting myself there. And the sport button will be enabled for that improved throttle response. Whew. Wow. Okay, that's quite a difference from stock. Woo! Beautiful steering. Steering rack feels tighter than the stock Cayman S for sure. Wow, carrying some big speeds through that corner. Amazing throttle response. Super direct, super linear. Wow, the difference in front end grip with these RT660s. And the difference in traction. Now this engine is interesting because it really comes on boil around 3,800 RPM. Below that, it actually feels not too dissimilar from that stock 3.4 liter. Let me demonstrate that here. 3,000 RPM, foot down. Right there's 3,800, and the tone of the engine changes, and it definitely gets a little boost in power. It's interesting, this shifter even feels better than stock. I'm not sure what he's done to it, but again, mod list in the video description. It has a much heavier throw and it's a lot less floppy feeling. Really digging this Alcantara wrapped stock steering wheel as well as the shifter. Let me demonstrate just the sheer difference in engine performance here. From first gear, I'm gonna roll into it. Now it still redlines around 7,200 RPM. The way it comes on at 3,800 RPM, it's almost like a VTEC crossover in a way. Look at that grip. So much grip. Oh, all right. One tire fire there. Still has a stock open diff. In the wet is where you really feel the 987 chassis need for a limited slip diff. That's what the Cayman R gives you, and this modified Cayman S could definitely use one as well. PASM suspension with adjustable control arms really feels great out here in the softer mode. I tried the firmer mode earlier and it was just way too much, but the soft mode feels excellent. Really keeps body control to a minimum. That's also because we have some H&R sway bars. This thing is fast. It kind of feels like a Cayman R Plus in terms of the engine performance. It just needs a rear limited slip diff to feel complete, in my opinion. Also, these seats are perfectly adequate. I have no issues with these for canyon driving. I can get the seat really nice and low, something I've noticed in every single Porsche I've driven, including my old 997 Carrera. That's one thing that Porsche always nails, is the seating position. This mild suspension setup really feels good. It feels like a major upgrade over the stock Cayman S suspension. PASM with adjustable lower control arms to get a little bit more camber, and some sway bars. I think those are really the main components that are contributing to this improved feel. It improves the steering feel as well. I think having more negative camber up front with a stickier tire compound makes the already excellent steering rack of the Cayman S even better, even sharper. The wheel is wriggling with feel. You can probably even tell on the camera, there's just so much feedback coming through. In a good way. It's not distracting. Woo. Handle that bump nicely. That bump right there is becoming a really good suspension test when I drive these cars, especially modified cars. Thankfully, this car handled that bump like a champ. Also, I'm noticing that this engine has more sensitive throttle response. Maybe that's because of a lighter flywheel. Not too sure, but it definitely revs up more eagerly. Here we go. Yes, that is intoxicating. Doesn't feel quite like a GT3 engine from the 997 era, for example, but the performance is definitely up there. It's just the the sound, the character, the high rev nature, you can still tell it's just a built Carrera engine. It's not the Motorsport Metzger engine. Wow, what a great car. With just minor suspension mods and a built Carrera engine, this thing really, really wakes up. It feels like a Cayman S++++, maybe 3 pluses. I would say handling wise, I actually prefer this over the stock Cayman R in some ways. I'm not sure if that's because of the wheel and tire setup with the control arms. Not really sure what it is, but I think the front end of this car responds even a little bit better than a stock Cayman R. And actually, I think the Cayman R that I reviewed had lower control arms and sticky tires as well. So I'm not sure what the difference is, but this has a sharper front end for sure. That being said, that was a really fun comparison for me, revisiting my old Cayman S and then getting the opportunity to drive this really nicely modified 08 Cayman S Sport. But are these mods worth the money? I think that's where it gets a little dicey, because at the end of the day, this engine is not going to be cheap to build, and it still doesn't provide, again, like I said, the same experience as a GT3 engine. Not that this costs anything near what a 997 GT3 costs nowadays, but for the same price, I bet you could probably find a 981 generation Cayman S. Won't be quite as visceral, won't be quite as raw as this 987 generation, but of course there's lots of pros to that 981 chassis as well. That might have to be a video for another day, but right now all I can say is, man, the 987 generation Cayman is such a good car. You can keep it stock like my old car and just enjoy it as a daily driver, or you can hot rod it up a little bit like this one, add another 100, 150 horsepower. Why not? With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'm located in the Bay Area, California, so if you have a cool car you'd like me to feature, hit me up. Subscribe if you have not already, and I'll see you in the next one.